Thank you very much for joining once again the Bible Prophecy Seminar. It's meeting number 3, and we cover part of lesson number 3. Just in case you missed our previous lesson, you just go to our website or to our YouTube channel, and you'll find there the recording of our last presentation, where we covered the prophecy in Daniel 2. Today we are moving on to next chapter, Daniel 3. But just short of a review, if you remember, for those who are here, for the others, once again, you can watch it on YouTube. We mentioned about was a visit to the opera, let's say, a night at the opera, where this man, Adolf Hitler, along with a friend, they visited there, they watched the show, and they were very impressed. And then Adolf Hitler took it as a sign, as a light for his path to move on and become, like Rinzi, become somebody who will lead an empire, who will really influence the entire world. And we mentioned during the lesson that Hitler probably never studied the prophecy of Daniel chapter 2. Why? Because we said if he had, he might have realized that his obsession with world dominance could never become a reality. Our lesson covered chapter 2 in the book of Daniel. The first lesson, it was just chapter 1, where we understood the settings. A young guy by the name of Daniel, it's a captive now in the empire and in the capital of Babylonian Empire, and he serves a king named Nebuchadnezzar. And this king one night has in chapter 2 now, he had a strange dream, or a series of dreams probably, and interested to know what the gods, that was their philosophy, what their gods would tell him as the mighty ruler of a powerful empire. He asked Daniel, "Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it?" If you remember, Daniel replied, "No wise man, no enchanter, no magician, no diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." He had known, he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come. And he even mentioned the revealer of mysteries, that is God, showed you, king, what is going to happen. But the thing is that most probably King Nebuchadnezzar was or had been deeply impressed by the image. He understood it, he was reminded, he clearly certified, all right, this is what I had dreamt. And probably he was very impressed, especially with the head of gold. And for a while, he seemed to have honored Daniel and God of heaven. That's how chapter 2 ends. But after a time, Nebuchadnezzar appears to have had second thoughts. Maybe there were some counselors, maybe there were some events, maybe it was something else in his life, and he felt a little resentful. And why? Because God had said another kingdom would arise and overthrow Babylon. Well, says the lesson, and we invite you to get online and check these lessons for yourself. Maybe Nebuchadnezzar could edit, fine-tune here and there a bit this prophecy. So we say to all of you now, welcome to the Bible Prophecy, welcome to our third meeting, and we move on. This was, in an artistic illustration, what Nebuchadnezzar dreamt. And when Daniel came to him and first explained the dream, detailed the dream, and then interpreted, he said something like this: "You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image, very nice. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you. and its form was awesome. I mentioned last time that for a king or for a Babylonian, to watch or to look at, to have in front of him a statue was not something new. It was like you'd say today to somebody, and yeah, you had a device in your hand. Of course, everybody these days may have a device. Or you would say, there was a billboard on a screen somewhere or on a building. Yes, this is something that we are so well accustomed with. In Babylon, to have statues was absolutely normal. And you would have a statues, either gods or kings. I mentioned also last time that this is a real statue in one of the museums in the world. And you can see its stature. It's high enough. And you can just imagine now one like this, but 5 or 6 times higher compared to the height of a human being. Why I say this? Because chapter 3 in Daniel starts with these words. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high, 6 cubits wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Now, again, on your screen, you'll see an artistic illustration made of gold. This is something so different. And that high, 60 cubits is like 30 meters or like a 10 stories kind of a building. So then you can see immediately that is not something that you could easily place in a museum. It's something that will go through the roof of it. And it is made of gold. It has the Babylonian measurements, like in 666. We will cover that probably later in this prophecy seminar. What about 666? You see, it comes from Babylon, where this statue has 60 by 6 and probably by 6 as proportions. It's made of gold, as I said, and it's set up in a plain so that everybody can easily see it, be impressed by it, and probably more, as we are about to check now. But we've heard already about a statue, right? We've read about one that Nebuchadnezzar was shown, and now it seems like he wants to kind of reflect that. But as you can easily see, there are some huge differences. And only now when we understand, okay, it's like 10 stories high, probably it was as big as the other one that was so impressive to the king. Only that this time, as I said, there are some differences. You can see that the head is the same, but the rest is different. You can see that the feet are not clay and iron, but gold steel. You can see that a stone is missing, and there are different other details I will cover in a few moments. The main thing is right where it starts. Do you remember the interpretation Daniel gave? It was all about the head. The head of gold, we'll see in a minute, it was Nebuchadnezzar. But following, it was a decreasing in value of the symbols or of materials used as symbols: silver, bronze, iron, and then clay. While here, it seems like, no, we wanted gold all over. So let's see for ourselves. It's like Nebuchadnezzar saying, I want gold, 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 nothing inferior. In the dream, it might have been, but in my dream, in my representation of the dream, I wanted all gold. And if you remember, we said each section, each segment of this statue represented an empire, a kingdom. But it seems like Nebuchadnezzar is saying, no transition. There will be nobody to follow me. There will be no mixtures, no iron and clay, for example. There will be no stone coming in. There will be no death. There will be no alternative. It is myself or my kingdom. Let's review for ourselves. Daniel said this image was of fine gold. And then he interpreted and said, "Oh, king, you are a king of kings. The God of heaven has made you ruler. You are this head of gold." And we said, up to here, it sounded very well. Babylon really ruled the world. But what followed was the big issue. Daniel said, the chest and arms were made of silver. Silver is inferior to the gold. And Daniel himself said to the king, after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. And we mentioned last time, how come that something inferior would conquer? It seems like a paradox. It seems like there is God involved there. Otherwise, the things would go the normal or the expected way. And reality is that the Medes and the Persians, the empire of Medo-Persia, conquered Babylon. So you can see that Nebuchadnezzar has a big issue, and that is to accept there is some other empire following him. We mentioned this sequence. It was Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome, and then Rome being transformed. And the fifth kingdom, which is not a human empire, was something that would never be conquered by another one, never followed by another, crushing all the others and lasting forever. Now, you are there. Probably many of those who were counselors of Nebuchadnezzar heard the dream, knew the interpretation, but now they are being invited by the king to come and worship this image. Once again, we invite you to read for yourself Daniel chapter 3, and you will find there that it was a great call for everybody who was somebody in the empire to come into that plain of Dura and there participate in this ceremony to dedicate the statue. It's clearly a mixture of politics and religion. Politics because you call all the judges, all the commanders, everybody again that was somebody in the empire, but you're not calling them only to a party, only to cut a ribbon, but you're calling them for the dedication of this statue. Dedicated to whom? Most probably to some gods, or to make it like a reflection of the king. So everybody will look at this statue and will say, this is our king, this is our empire, we will live forever. But again, it was a huge difference from or compared to the dream itself. And there you have all kinds of people. Some of them would bow down and worship right away. But some others would just be standing, listening to a different type of call or different drum, if you may. And it may happen in our lives also. You find it in the news or anywhere you open a book, an article, a movie, a discussion, a debate, a law, something about marriage, about war, about LGBT and other rights, about abortion, vaccination, education, civil rights, apartheid, freedom. You find those. And on some of this, even in the list, on some of this, it may be that I take a stand and you take a different stand. Or some of us will take a stand and the majority will take a different stand. In what Nebuchadnezzar does, you can see a mixture of the two symbols I put on the screen, which is political power and religious power. And when you combine the two, church and state, if you may, that's when a kind of antichrist comes in. The church itself might not have the power to force or to impose its laws, its customs, services, ceremonials. The state itself also might have the power of the law, but may think if we get involved, also the church has a different approach, has a different appeal to people. So many times in the Bible, you will find church and state united. I'll give you just one example. Do you remember who decided Jesus Christ was to be crucified? We can say, oh, it was Pilate, the political power. But Pilate didn't dream that night saying, oh, I want to kill Jesus this morning. It was the priests, it was the religious leaders who brought Jesus in and said, this is guilty, you should condemn him, sentence him to death. It was this mixture of church and state, of political power and religious power, who brought Jesus to the cross. So the lesson, I'm quoting now the lesson itself, says, Nebuchadnezzar was using political authority to enforce a certain kind of worship. In later chapters in Daniel, in the book of Revelation, we'll see how this combination of church and state is pictured in prophecy. It's part of a counterfeit religious system that will rear its ugly head again and oppress God's people. Why do we study this one in our Bible prophecy seminar? Because we think that lessons in the past will have an influence in the future. Things that happened to God's people in centuries past may be repeated, may be even imposed with greater power to God's faithful people towards the end of time. And here we have in this chapter 3, Daniel's friends. If you remember in Daniel chapter 1, we had Daniel and 3 friends. They were together there. This time, Daniel himself is out of the picture, but these 3 friends of his, they are being exposed. They are being challenged to see, okay, what do you do now? And the Bible says that these 3 guys did not worship, did not bow down. Probably there was a lot of pressure on them. And most probably they could have had some excuses, saying, for example, oh, you know, my belly hurts, and you just bow down. Or you bow down to tie or untie your shoes. Or maybe your keys just fell there. And of course, formally, you could have just bowed down. But they did not. They stood up. And that made other guys angry. I'm reading now from what the Bible says. Some guys saw these 3 men and they went to the king saying, "O king, there are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon." And now the names, the Babylonian names of these 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. Now see the accusation. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image you have set up. Can you see now what was the dedication all about? It was to dedicate this image to the gods. It was not only a political kind of meeting. They are not saying only, you know, they disregard you. That's part in there. You find it there. They have not paid due regard to you. So the political power, it's emphasized. But you can see also the religious aspect of it, where they say they do not serve your gods. or worship the image. So we can understand right away it was a high issue of worshiping an idol that was either dedicated to a god or represented that god. The king was, of course, upset and called them to order. And he was like, guys, maybe you did not hear. Should I put a trumpet? Should I make a second call? And they answered and said to the king, oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, what case? The king warned them, you'll be killed. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us, from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. You remember Nebuchadnezzar was not an easy guy. The moment those counselors could not interpret or tell and interpret the dream, he killed them right away, chopped off their heads. So this time, when they are in that plain of Dura, there are certain furnaces. Probably there was some oil underneath, and they could just turn the heat on 7 times just by switching some dials there. And the warning is, and the high risk is, if you do not worship, you'll be killed. Now, these young guys say, we do not have, or we do not need to answer. It's not that they are disregarding the king, as the accusation was, but they feel like, we don't need any debate with you on this one. Please, if some of you are really students of the Bible, you will see that this is where Eve got it wrong, when she engaged with the serpent into a dialogue, into a debate. Some things in the Bible are so certain that we have no need to debate that. So this guy is now saying to the king, Lord, our king, you're the majesty, but here is an issue that we do not need to discuss at all. If you want to kill us, that's fine. God is able to deliver us, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. What is nice is what follows. But if not, if God does not intervene this time, maybe he has other plans. Maybe he wants us to die as martyrs. If not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the golden image which you have set up. So you can see these guys are faithful to death. There are two layers in their obedience. One is, the Lord is able. The Lord can take us out, can save us. But even if he doesn't, you go to a underlayer, even if he doesn't, we are still not ready, not going to worship the gold image which you set up. Can you see these guys are keen enough, are discerning the times. They understand it's not a political thing. It's not only a law that the king gave, but it's a law mixtured with religious aspects. So they say, we will not worship the golden image which you have set up. Why? At least 2 reasons. There are more. As Jews, and we as Christians also, they knew the 10 Commandments. You remember those 2 tablets of stone that Moses got from the Lord with God's own writing on them. And the first commandment was a recognition of God as the only God. And it said, you shall have no other gods before me. You could easily see a huge challenge for these Jews in Babylon, where everywhere you'd look, you'll see tens, hundreds, thousands of gods their temples, their idols, their statues, their symbols, their ceremonials, everything was there. And the commandment for them was no other gods, one. But the second commandment is even more clear, but also going into details. You should not make for yourself any carved image. Was a statue a carved image? Yes, indeed. Or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve. Please, with this second commandment, I think most of Christianity is in a different position. I understand that people use figures, use symbols. Even myself, I would use, even tonight, you will see a certain representation of the Lord. So we can say, okay, it's not a carved image because it's not in the stone. It may be made of pixels. It may be just a painting. It may be even in your mind. And the advice here, the commandment here is watch out so that you do not fool yourself. It may not be carved, but what if it's a likeness? It's something that you feel is like, something that in your mind or in your philosophy is like that. Once again, in the churches, we see symbols. And I understand many people would bow down in front of a statue or in front of a painting, or may even kiss that monument or whatever relic might be there. But please review your habits or customs or your teachings, so you make sure you do not break the second commandment. These Jews knew exactly that you should have no other gods, it's only one. And what about the thousands around us? And once again, it can be saints, can be Christian saints, can be a hero of our nation, can be just a symbol like a dove or an angel or something like that. But please do not bow down and do not serve those. Why? Because they replace God. And this is the big issue in Nebuchadnezzar's experience now. He has received a representation from the Lord, but now he's taking that aside and saying, I would like to put my own in there. So for these Jews, to worship there was a real challenge. Of course, one can come and say, but hey, they were just captives. Or they were officers there, so they had to obey the law, right? They were in the service of the king. Or you can say, it was just a festive season. Come on, enjoy with us, participate with us. Even if you don't believe everything that we say or we sing or we clap on here, it's just a festive. Be formal, just bow down, just say or sing along. And the key word might be, you should. But on the other hand, these Jews could have said, we are free. We are indeed captives of Babylon, but we are free because we are sons of God and we are believers. Of course, we are officers in your service, O King, but we are in service of a higher king also. And you have your law, but we also have God's law, which in the first and the second commandment plainly say, do not worship in front of any statue or idol. Even more, they could have said, we have our own experience with the Lord. We could have been dead by now. with our heads chopped off along with the other guys. But God saved us. Of course, he can do it once again. And King, you had a dream. We know that dream. We received the interpretation following a session of prayer. So we cannot just kick away all our experience, the dream, all our laws and our beings, just because somebody says so. So the key word then for them would be, you should not. It's not compulsory. The lesson says, have you ever felt isolated as a different one? Maybe you didn't laugh at a cruel or racist joke. Maybe you chose not to watch some popular TV show because it was mean-spirited or vulgar. Maybe your beliefs make you seem the odd one at work. You know, everybody goes for a smoke and you say, sorry, I don't smoke. Interesting. But what if everybody says, let's go to a party, everybody drinks there and that's it. And you say, sorry, I don't drink alcohol. What if to your kids or to some youth that you know, people say, put something in your veins, a drug or something. And that guy will say, no, I'm not. You can be, or you may be, the odd one, right? The Bible says, the lesson says something that is based on the Bible. Remember, God is a great deliverer, but sometimes he allows us to witness for him in what may appear to be a defeat rather than a victory. You can just think of even Jesus Christ. He died on the cross, so people could easily dismiss all the stories saying, hey, he died, end of report. And it could look as a defeat, but in the end it was a victory. And it's the same for these three young fellows here. Finally, they indeed were taken and thrown into the fiery furnace. I know at this point some guys may say, oh, come on, this is just a story for the kids, right? And you throw anything in the fire and that's it. But this lesson is a challenge now. It's an invitation for us to see how unbelievable it was for that guy Nebuchadnezzar, who boasted to this guy saying, who is that God that can snatch you from my hand? Nebuchadnezzar seemed to be like infallible pope, president, owner of billions of dollars, somebody that says nothing can stand in my way. And indeed, these three guys are being thrown into the fire. And guess what? They are alive. The king was astonished. He arose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, didn't we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And it's a rhetorical question. The obvious answer was, yes, indeed, sir. We threw them, 3 of them, yes. But he continues saying, I see 4 men loose and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. You can see that he was really astonished. You throw in 3 and you see 4. And when you look and you're very interested to know, okay, who's the 4th one? How did he get in there? That's a big issue there. How did he get in there? You'll find out, oh, wait. He's so different than the other guys. He doesn't look like a son of man. He mostly looks like a son of God. So most probably his shining, the manner of his shining was so different, even in the fire, that the king said, wait a second, it is way, way beyond my imagination. Guess what? Is anyone looking now at the statue of gold? Or are they looking to the fiery furnace? Why? Because in the fiery furnace, you see somebody that shines, that survives fire, that came into the fire out of nowhere. The statue of Nebuchadnezzar, as glittering as it could have been, is now just forgotten. Because there's no more a need for it to represent a god. Why? Because you have a god right there in the furnace, and it's alive. And this, guess what? On the other side of history, compared to Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar felt like, oh, I'm the right guy. I write history. But this time he realizes that the real history is on the other side of the furnace. And he calls those guys out, and he acknowledges that God saved them indeed. You remember, I put back on the screen, they said to him, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. And he did, right? He delivered them. He will deliver us from your hand, O king. But even if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Now, may I ask, if they did not worship before, do you think they would worship after? No way. It was the absolute proof that God could save them. There was no other explanation. There was no second thoughts here. It was nothing else to intervene in between. On the screen is the statue of Jan Hus in Prague, or John Hus. The right name would be Jan. In the 14th century, he stood against the mighty Nebuchadnezzar of the time, which was the church majority, the church that had majority in that time, the Catholic Church in the entire Europe. And he stood against because there were some abuses. And we know them even today. And Jan Hus paid for his stance with his life. Jan Hus, says the lesson, is an example of a person who suffered for his faith and yet remained gracious to the end. This Czech reformer stood firm for gospel truth against the corrupt church of his day. But he was also always eager to learn. So when the Council of Constance demanded that he renounce his biblical teachings, Hus replied, I would most gladly recant before all the world every falsehood and every error I have ever thought of saying or have said. So his accusers tried to bully instead of pursue him, and Hus was condemned. At the execution, Hus underwent a ceremony of degradation. When bishops intoned the final curse, they said, we commit your soul to the devil. Hus answered, and I commit it to the most merciful Lord, Jesus Christ. As the wood and the straw piled up to his neck and they were lit, Hus began singing, Christ, thou Son of the living God, have mercy on us. His lips were still moving silently when he died. This is not the story of somebody who escaped death, but it's the story of somebody who did not bow down no matter what. On the other hand, we have a guy like Adolf Hitler who said, all is well, the Third Reich will be established, Germany will reign supreme for 1,000 years. It was Nebuchadnezzar's mind. So please have tonight these two symbols. Why? Because even as it was in the plain of Dura, Hitler was also mesmerizing thousands and thousands and millions of people. But there came a time when the newspaper said, Hitler is dead. No king would accept that somebody else will follow him, or will not easily accept that. For Nebuchadnezzar, this was the big, the great, the huge struggle. So he wanted a Reich like Hitler that will last forever, that will be gold all the way down. But the history confirmed it was God's plan to be fulfilled. So when these three young guys were there, it was just a symbol of what later Jan Hus went through and other reformers. And it will be a symbol of what is going to happen in the future when the church and the state might come together. That's why we are studying the Bible prophecy, because the empires will follow and the pressure will be there. And the best is when the church and the state go together and then enforcing so that everybody can move as they want. The chapter ends with Nebuchadnezzar saying, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants." They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. These are the empires. We have seen them already. A new kingdom is to come, which is the kingdom of Jesus Christ, never conquered by another, never followed by another, crushing all others and lasting forever. To this kingdom, we invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to have our allegiance ready to serve this kind of kingdom and not a kingdom of human emperors or rulers in this world. Thank you very much. I end here the presentation, inviting you to come also next Thursday. Thank you.